Oh my God. Hello, everyone. Good evening. I forgot the rest of my uniform. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the 12 Beers of Christmas live stream craft beer experience presented by Brewvana. My name's Brian. I'm your host, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Thom. Thom, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Still reliving that great Belgian saison from last night. How did everybody love that one last night? Everybody have a good time with that beer?
I think they did. Chat was going crazy over that beer, going crazy over lots of other stuff. We have yet another great beer tonight. So without further ado, let's jump into it and open this beer. I got my box right here. Got a nice inclusion with this one. Some charcoal marshmallows.
An upgrade from the charcoal last year. This time you can eat it.
Yes, yes. I will not make my same Breaking Bad joke as much as I want to reference Breaking Bad. Again, we got this great Epic Los Locos Mexican style lager from Epic. My terrible pun there. Nick says, "Rest in peace, box cam." Yes, no box cam this year. We're just using the beautiful pictures that our social media guy Franny took for us. So you already know what the box is. You already know what the beer is. Thom, what are you thinking about this one?
It is so crisp. It's hard to believe that it's 5% alcohol. You know, that's a big thing where this brewery is from, is how much alcohol you can put it when it comes to a Utah brewery. But this is for a light Mexican lager. This is a nice, crisp look. I mean, look right through that beer. That looks great. Well done. Very well carbonated. Super tasty. One of my favorite styles, as we learned last night.
Yes. All right. So back again for another night with a great beer. This one is described as an award-winning lager that evokes tropical memories with flavors of sea salt and a splash of lime. We're going to dig more into this beer later, but first, let's get some housekeeping out of the way. Now, tonight and every night, we have a chat moderator with us to help answer audience questions. So feel free to use the chat to start conversations, but keep your questions into the question and answer section. Our chat moderator, Ben, is going to help out with that tonight. Ben, how you doing?
I'm great. Thank you. I just want to really quick remind everyone to utilize the drop-down menu above the chat box and select everyone so that we can all read your comments. And then if you want to throw any questions in the Q&A, please do not hesitate to utilize that feature.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben. Everybody say hi to Ben. Throw up your thoughts in the beer about the beer in the chat here. Everyone saying hi to Ben in the chat. Great group of folks in the chat back again tonight.
So I did notice that someone did mention that on the can it does say that it is made in Denver. That is quite possibly true because they do have a brewery in Denver as well. They have a tap room and so forth. Their home base is in Utah, but this one may very well have come straight from Denver. Depending on whether they change the can art or not. But yeah, this is a great start. Great start to the night.
Great beer. It's a Mexican lager, as they say. So anybody have an idea of what a Mexican lager is? Throw it up in the chat there. Excited to hear your opinions, but we're going to get a little bit into what a Mexican lager is for sure.
Absolutely. So this one's basically a very clean lager, no bitterness, very little sweetness. You can use that salt and lime. Obviously goes well with a good Mexican dish as well. Originally derived from a Vienna lager. Modern craft examples usually flaked with like maize, which is corn that's been rolled through hot rollers. You know, some ththings like I mentioned last night, like a Negro Modelo is a typical Mexican lager. Modelo Especial, just another version of Modelo there. And then the pale lager with lime and sea salt is this one here, this Los Locos lager.
Yeah, you mentioned those examples there. You could basically break down Mexican lager into like 3 different styles or 3 different sub styles of the bigger style. You have your pale lagers with flaked maize, which is that corn that Thom described. And a perfect example would be Especial, Modelo Especial. You also have your amber lager made with flaked maize, and Negra Modelo would be a perfect example of that. And then you have the kind of the wild card in there, which is the pale lager made with lime and sea salt. And that's what we have here, a beer that it just evokes the flavors of summer so much. This is a beach crusher if I ever had one. And it's just a great low ABV beer from a brewery that's really known for its high alcohol beers. Like some people have mentioned in the chat, Big Bad Baptiste is this big imperial series of beers that they do, and other things. I want to jump to JJL's question real quick though. How exactly do the charcoal marshmallows factor in? Let's get to some beer pairings. Crack open these charcoal marshmallows. They're not going to taste like charcoal like you're expecting. I had one earlier in the other box that I got. So go ahead, wolf that down. Ooh, there's 2 in there. Wolf one down. I get a little smokiness out of it. And I think it goes really well with this beer because that sea salt and lime. Really goes well with that smoky flavor from the charcoal, and definitely brings out a lot of nice lime, citrus, and salinity from this beer. Thom, you don't have a marshmallow. You're like the master of marshmallows.
I put the marshmallow. It's in the other room. I left it in my box. I eat so many of these marshmallows in my Washington warehouse on a regular basis that I just didn't. I should have thought I'm a co-host. I should be chomping down on these, but I've eaten so many of them in my time that I didn't go with that. But
you're mellowed out.
I mean, I do love myself some marshmallows. I love them in an ice cream. I love them, a good s'mores ice cream is pretty good. This beer here would probably go really well with that because again, like you said, that smoky flavor goes along with that.
Well, Ryan in the chat agrees. Would go great
Absolutely.
with s'mores.
Absolutely. This is a beach crusher. As someone else mentioned in the chat, this for sure would be that great thing to take along with us as we're, especially where I'm from in the Pacific Northwest. We'd be bundled up from head to toe in Columbia outwear, but we'd be drinking this beer to make sure we're enjoying the beach and the sands at the same time there with that.
Yeah, so I'm interested to hear what people in the chat are thinking. Tim is saying, I'm wishing I had a nice steak with a chili rub on it right now. I think, yeah, like a nice roasted meat would go great with this beer. That citrus would set off. Kit Kat, I'm guessing that's how you say that, Kit Kat. Marshmallows are better than the cool I got as kid. I hope so. I hope you didn't eat that coal. I hope nobody forced you to eat that coal. I think the coal was supposed to be like a symbolic gift, or maybe a utilitarian gift. You could use it to heat your house.
I think Kit Kat might not have been on the non-naughty list. I think Kit Kat might have been not one of Santa's favorite and was trying to be taught a lesson. But now we can turn it back on Santa and eat charcoal marshmallows instead, and say, here, this is what we're going to do for Christmas. Take that, Santa.
Take that, Santa.
If only he was here to smoke some candy canes this year.
Oh, God. Santa has been banned. For those that joined us last year, Santa came on and was a nuisance, and he's been politely asked to not return this year. I'm just going to spill the beans. I've been stalling here. I've been trying to see. I've been coordinating back and forth. Unfortunately, it looks like our guest, Jordan from Epic, will not be able to join us this evening. So we're just going to have a nice chat here. We're going to bring in some questions from the chat, from you watching at home. We're going to talk about this beer. We're going to talk about Epic Brewing. We'll talk probably a little bit about Salt Lake City, Utah, and their fun beer laws.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just going to have a good time tonight. Sorry, anyone that tuned in for Jordan specifically, but some wires got crossed there, and unfortunately, you're stuck with Thom and I.
Yeah, but we can still fill you in. I mean, the whole reason Epic became a brewery was to battle those beer laws. Their focus was making beers above that 4.0 ABV when they started. So 4.0 was the whopping high point that you could basically get beer from a grocery store or anywhere else anytime it was above 4%, or on draft. Yes.
Yeah.
So if you wanted something more than that, you had to go to one of their state-run liquor stores. Epic came in there and started to force that, and they've raised it to 5%, I believe, in the last few years. So this beer you could actually, I think, buy at a grocery store at this point. But most of their beers are really huge. They are epic. Way up there. They're epic, as it were. So
yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Todd.
No, you go ahead. I'm cutting you off. I'll drink.
Thankfully, recently, I believe just last year, Utah changed those laws to where now it's 5%, I think, that you can serve on draft in there. It's what they call their baseball beer. It's the beer that you can get at baseball games. And still, Epic bucks that trend. I just read, I think 2 years ago, they released an 11.5% IPA. When everybody was doing low-cal IPAs, they specifically released a high-cal IPA that had 500 calories in it. And they're obviously a brewery that likes to push the envelope. They've been around since 2010, founded in Salt Lake City. And as Thom mentioned and alluded to earlier, they did move some of their brewing operations, open a tap room in Denver in 2013. So if you've ever seen their Escape to Colorado IPA, that's kind of where that idea came from, is when they literally ventured into Denver to open up another location. Let's jump to some questions, because Doug Lutz has a good one, and everybody wants to ask about this seemingly every night. So we're going to dive into it tonight with our lack of a guest. Let's talk about glassware. Specifically, let's talk about this style. Thom, what kind of glass would you grab if you're pulling out a Mexican log or something like this, nice and crisp, refreshing?
I'm more inclined to go with something that you're drinking from today, something that's a little bit straight up and down, yet has that kind of open bubble, because the one thing that I want to do when I drink my beer is I want to get my nose right into the glass. I want to smell it while I drink it. But lager is one of those ones where you have a lot more leeway than, say, with an IPA or something else. You don't need to be sniftering it. It could be a shaker pint if you really wanted to, although you're going to lose some of that aroma. You're also not going to get that lip on a shaker pint that a lot of these, this is a Medford Pilsner glass that I'm drinking from, that lip that's going to add a little bit of a more bubble to it when it hits that and goes right over. If anyone's taken the tour at Sam Adams in Boston, you know there's a lot of talk about how those little extra touches. This particular glass too has a kind of a angled bottom where it's going to also help aerate that beer when you're pouring it down the side and give it that little extra escape of the bubbles as they come up. And we do, especially in a lager, we do want a lot of bubbles. That effervescence feel is definitely for it. What about you, Brian? What are your glass choices that you're going to make when you're picking something like this out?
So this is my go-to glass. They call this, I don't even know if I say this right, they call it a Willie Beaker style glass. Somebody can please correct me in the chat. But I use this in almost all beers, because Brian, a very, very well-named individual in the Q&A, asked, can we go over what glassware to use with each style? Does it really matter? Are they going to come and revoke my certified beer server pin from the Cicerone program for saying this? It really doesn't matter. Drink out of the glass that you want to. I don't think a glass is ever going to really take away from your experience of drinking beer. Oh, and I can just see chat blowing up from this. But a good glass is going to enhance it. Something like this, these Willie Beaker pint glasses, I'm going to use from all my lagers. I'm going to use it for brown ales, amber ales, IPAs, maybe even some lower ABV stouts. For something like a high ABV stout, something like the Saison we had last night, I'm going to reach for like a Tiku or a goblet, something that has that little bit more bowl-shaped bottom and kind of directs those aromas up towards the nose. I mean, if I'm drinking a lambic and I really want to feel fancy, I have a nice big wine glass that really gets those aromas up towards my nose. But at the end of the day, you grab the glass that you like pouring your beer into. It's not going to take away from it. Chat, what is going on in Mexico? I think this beer would be drunk from a solo cup. I think all around the country, all around the world, this is a good beer to have from a solo cup. This is the kind of beer you're going to be pounding all day while you're out, maybe playing on the concrete. You don't want to drop a glass. So red solo cup is a good go-to. Good friend of mine drank his beer out of his work boot. Of course, Mike Crocco said that, calling in from joining us from the home of Holly Flax today, Nashua, New Hampshire. Office reference for those out there. You know what a really good TV reference is, Thom? When you have to tell everybody what TV show you're referencing is. So yeah, great.
Absolutely. Woo, right over that. If you wouldn't have said it out loud, I would have missed it. Another answer though too is depending like on that Saison that we were drinking last night, or a nice heavy stout or whatnot, I might grab a glass where I can get some hand warmth to it. So you can heat that up to beyond in that 40 to 50 degree range, so you get some more of those notes that come out. This beer is obviously not one of those, but really every glass has its benefits, and it also has some of its detractors along the way. You might miss a little bit, but for the most part, as long as you are enjoying it, you can't really go wrong with that.
Beer is for everybody. Consume it how you makes you happy, Nick in the chat brought up a very good point. He said his mind is blown when he went to the Alchemist in Stowe and they very forcefully told them to drink their beers from the cans. And that comes from a freshness thing. Thom, have you ever been to the Alchemist in Stowe?
I have not. I've been to the warehouse where they store all their beer, but I have never drank a heady topper or been out that far yet. And I definitely need to get out there. I mean, I go to Burlington enough in my life that I can make that drive while I'm up there.
Well,
but I just haven't.
You've seen the pallets of the Focal Banger and Heady Toppers there, and you see they very prominently say drink from the can. And that really is just the freshness thing. Fellow Yinzer and founder of The Alchemist, John Kimmick, always talks about having that beer as fresh as possible. And one of the things that can take away from the freshness is oxidation and aeration of the beer. So to really preserve it as much as you possibly can, they recommend drinking it straight out of the can. But again, outside of maybe Vermont, nobody's going to slap a glass out of your hand if you try to start pouring your Heady Topper or your Focal Banger into a glass. And side note, if you ever watch John Kimmick do his tastings on their Instagram, he pours all the beers into a glass anyway. So, shh.
Yeah, I used to have a real stigma about beers and cans. I wouldn't drink a beer that it wasn't in a bottle until I realized I could pour it in a glass. It took me 35 years to figure out that I could pour it in a glass. But now I pour all of my beer in glass, whether it's from a bottle, from a can, from a growler, whatever it takes. It's going to go in a glass because I don't know. That's how I drink beer now.
Yeah, it's just it's part of the ritual. Got to pull the glass out, rinse it out, sit it down. Want to respond to Nick's question in the Q&A. Where can you snag a jacket like mine? This is a cheap polyester jacket. Just go to tipsyelves.com. I was going to make a funny joke that it's like a bespoke jacket, but no, just go to Tipsy Elves and buy silly stuff. They're not sponsoring us. Just go get one. We can be jacket bros, Nick. Ross asked a good question. When you brew this beer, how do you add the lime and salt right at the end? This would be an excellent question if our guest was here tonight, Jordan. But he is not, unfortunately. So we are just going to speculate wildly over when you would add this. No, typically when you add ingredients like this, the salt you would add towards the end of the boil, because you don't want to lose any of that salinity that's in there. You could also add some salt after fermentation. Depends how much they want to get out of that salt, how much character. And the lime, most likely, I believe in this case is specifically lime juice. So they would blend that into the beer after fermentation has finished. And yeah, but those, like I said, those are just guesses. That's how you would do something like that. How Epic does it, it's different from brewery to brewery. So you could reach out to Epic and ask them specifically how they do it.
Yeah, I believe you nailed the addition part right on the head, Brian. I think that's most common that it would be done, and especially like if you were brewing that beer, that's what you would do, right?
Yeah. When I didn't have fatherly responsibilities and I was able to have free time and brew beer, that's what I most certainly would have done. But it certainly wouldn't have tasted as good as this.
Don't sell yourself short.
Lagers are very hard to brew. If people at home don't know, there are all kinds of different styles, and we got 12 different styled beers in this box, and there's hundreds of different styles out there. But if you didn't know, every beer is one of two types of beer. And you have your ales and you have your lagers. Tonight we're drinking a lager. Last night we had an ale. First night we had a lager. And the big difference between those beers is the temperature at which they get fermented. So usually ales will get fermented at room temperature. So you can literally just set it in the corner of your office. It'll ferment and do just fine. Most beer brewed throughout history was ales. If you didn't know, beer is about 13,000 years old. So through most of our brewing history, brewed ales. However, lagers get fermented at much colder temperatures, around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So lagers are only about 500-600 years old and require specialized equipment to keep that beer at that perfect temperature while it's fermenting. So lagers are much more difficult to brew. There's not a lot to hide behind. That's what you hear all the fancy brewers say. Thom, we brought this up last night. Have you tried to brew before?
I have brewed with friends before. I worked at a brewery and brewed by handing grain to the actual brewer and helping him pour in.
Collab day.
But here's the thing. The thing about brewing is it's 90% cleaning. And I would rather leave that hard work to the brewers in the world with that, because I'll stir the mash, I'll sparge everything out, I'll do all that stuff. But you want me to clean your tank? I'll peace out and drink the beer while you do that. Thank you so much.
Well, that's the best part about a collab day for when we're brewers. It's like somebody else has got to clean out the equipment today.
Absolutely. So yes, I have brewed many. I've brewed with Widmer. I've brewed with Coin Toss Brewing. I've brewed with 5440. I've brewed with home brewers, but I have not once cleaned a vessel. So I think that negates me as being a brewer, because I don't do the hard part. I will help build a grain bill. I will do all those other things, but don't make me scrub anything. That's serious labor. And more power to every brewer out there who is willing to do that, who has worked their way up through the ranks. It's amazing that you've been willing to put in the time to do that.
Yeah, as we'll talk about as we go through our guest list and our different beers throughout these next nights of streams, brewing is a very labor-intensive job that takes a lot of hard work for not the greatest career projections, to put it lightly. They are not making as great of a living as they should be, given how much joy comes out of the product that they make. So again, Brian asked for a follow-up of my thoughts on the glass versus bottle can. I don't like drinking out of a bottle personally. I'll drink out of a can. I'm like Thom, though. I tend to pour it into a glass. You get more aromas out of the glass, but sometimes, you're doing yard work, you're running around, you're playing football, you're doing whatever, playing hockey. Sometimes it's good to just chug one out of the can, and can't fault anybody for drinking out of a bottle either. Do what you like.
Absolutely. I just noticed that Micah had asked something that's not in the Q&A section about pouring. I'm going off board. You know me. My nickname when I was pouring beer was the rogue bartender. So don't ever expect me to stay on script. Speaking of pouring beer, some would let their tap pour before serving the first pint, and other ones in a smaller town do not. Does this make a drastic change in the line? And I would say the answer is no. Unless it's the first pour of the day, if you've been pouring pints all day long, whether you let some run off or whether you don't, doesn't make a huge difference. However, what does make a difference is in the amount of head that you often get when you're pouring a beer. When I was pouring beer, I would definitely pour a little bit off the top just to make sure I can control that foam as I'm doing the proper pour into a 45-degree angle and then turning it up. A lot of times, if you don't know, especially if you have an over-carbonated line, you might get a lot of that blowback at the beginning. So I'm always trying to make sure that gets out. But that is definitely waste. That is going down the drain. So some places may not be willing to do that. The one thing that you never want to do when you're pouring beer is let that spout get into the beer. I've seen many places do that, and it is a great way to get things pushed back up into the line, cause infections and other things as far as like off flavors and so forth. You never want to do that.
Yeah, they really. I took tips training here in PA. It's like the alcohol safety course, and they stress that like 3 or 4 times in the thing, and to offer conjecture, to be devil's advocate, there are certain styles of faucets. Specifically Czech side pull faucets that they actually teach people to pour with the faucet in the beer too. So like, I don't know if is there something different with those ones, that they are somehow cleaner or they have more pressure pushing out of them, but definitely not a sanitary practice, as Thom said.
Mm-hmm.
Where are we going now? Lots of questions popping up in the proper places. No,
Yes.
George says, are all 12 going to be West Coast beers? No, I can say very definitively that tomorrow's night, I will spoil, the next 2 nights' beers will definitely not be West Coast beers. Yes, we've had a Portland beer, a Washington beer, and now a Mountain Region?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all West Coast.
Yeah, it's we've moved into mountain time with these for sure. We've worked our way, and we'll visit every time zone in the United States in this box.
I'm starting to think through the way the beers are laid out, and that might happen. Now that I'm thinking of the beers, we're going to make our way across the country here. To answer Mike's question, I haven't looked any beers from New England in this magic box. Mike, I think you'll be surprised. Come later.
Yeah, I think we'll all be surprised.
Yes.
Yeah. We can't be Grinches and spoil those open squares.
Yeah. One other question I want to tackle in the chat here before we get to wrapping things up this evening. Rocky said, if the brewery guy was here, I'd ask what temperature they lager this beer at, guessing low 50s. That's what they would ferment a beer like this at. Lagering typically takes place just above freezing, 32.5, 33 degrees Fahrenheit. They want it as cold as possible because that's going to promote as much particulate to drop out of that beer and really clean up the appearance of that beer. So, Thom.
Yes, sir.
Anything to say to the folks as we wrap up here on this wonderful Monday evening?
I would say I am so happy that you guys and ladies, gentlemen, all showed up tonight to enjoy some conversation back and forth between Brian and myself. I hope you guys learned a lot, even with a little bit of a history about Epic as well. With that, this felt like an awful lot like a City Brew Tour, where we talked back and forth about the things that are going on, even though we didn't have shiny metal vessels behind us. But this was a great conversation about some of the processes that we go through. And I appreciate y'all coming in and letting Brian and I spout off about some of that stuff.
Yes, it was very great for everybody to join us this evening. I can't help myself. We should take one more question from the chat.
Absolutely.
Because Daniel just asked a really good one. I'm sorry. Can you explain why a Vienna lager became something brewed in Mexico? I guess I can answer that. I did some research for this, and what happened was basically like the brewing here in America. Austrian and German immigrants moved to certain areas of Mexico. They took advantage of the local crops, the local ingredients, which at the time was a lot of corn, and they rolled that into their Vienna style beers that evolved over 100, 150 years. And modern day, Corona becomes the most popular import-export beer in the world. People really start to love the taste of crisp Vienna style lager coming from Mexico, and then we see the dispersing of the three different styles of Mexican lagers happen. So yeah, Thom, there is something I need to talk to you about. A little sensitive.
Okay.
I got all these. I got this background here and jacket and the hat, and like you got the star chart and the snowman, but like I feel like you didn't like really take it to the nines with the background. And like, I think because of that, and I think I'm just gonna blame you for the co-host not show or the guest not showing up tonight. Like, I'm gonna have to get a different co-host tomorrow. I'm sorry, Thom, but I don't think this is gonna work out.
You better kick me off before I start crying.
Oh, okay. Well, guys, everyone, come back tomorrow night. We will have another co-host. Guys, say.
Jumpin' Jay's right, though. The start chart is the Santa tracker.
I stopped your video and you're still talking. You mess with the illusion. He does have the Santa tracker. No, we will be joined by another guest tomorrow. Thom, as time has come to an end, he is going to get some well-deserved time off after this holiday season. In all seriousness, everybody say thank you to Thom. Thom actually leads the fulfillment team in our organization that made sure all of these Christmas boxes made it to everybody safely. So props to Thom and his team. Everybody say thank you to him. Thom, thanks for joining me as a co-host tonight. As always, for more, check out brewvana.com. You can find us on Instagram at Brewvana. We're also on Facebook at Brewvana. We'll be back tomorrow with a new co-host, a couple more guests, another awesome beer, and more fun in the chat. Thanks, everybody. We're going to see you tomorrow. Have a good night.
I'm waving, everyone. You can't see me, but I'm waving.